Atma. Prakriti kriyamani gune kamani sarvashaha ankara vimujatatma kataha miti manyate. Word for word translation. Prakriti of material nature, kriyamanani being done, gune by the moods, karmani activities, sarvashaha all kinds of, ahankara vimuda bewildered by false ego, atma the spirit soul, karta doer, aham I, iti thus, manyate he thinks. Translation. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is a symptom of his nescience. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature. Under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna and Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha, well, the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Okay, I'll just recite the invocation prayers. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayan Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shivashakavatam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopeshwar Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhana Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Charu Swami Iti Namane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Vachyacha Disatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much once again to Pranag and Shavin for reciting the beautiful verses of the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 3, Karma Yoga. I also like to kindly ask the blessings for all the devotees who are sort of listening onto this chat Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and with the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj, Bhaktacharya Swami, and your blessings, kindly allow me to say something which is spiritually palatable for your devotional services. So once again, the verse was Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 3, verse 27. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So this is a very beautiful verse. It's actually been recited by Srila Prabhupada many, many times during his lectures, his conversations with devotees and materialistic people as well. So there's three particular points in this particular verse. The first one is the spirit soul. The second one is the false ego. And the third one is modes of material nature. So we'll just describe them one by one as we go along. As we know, the spirit soul is part and parcel of Krishna. And where is that part and parcel come from? When we look at the mature manifestation, we have the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the cause of all causes, the creator of this whole material and spiritual manifestation. From Lord Krishna comes Mahavishnu, Mahatattva, known as Karandakshai Vishnu. And from the pores of his, or the pores on his skin, comes the multi-universes as it breathes in and breathes out. From the skin pores, all the universes are emanated in this mature cosmic universe. And that is, in each of the universe, we have Karanaksha Vishnu, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, beg your pardon, Garbhadaksha Vishnu residing on each of the universes, residing on the causal ocean. From him, he expands further into Sharadaksha Vishnu. Now, Sharadaksha Vishnu is actually the super soul, the Paramatma, is situated in the heart of every living entity. Even according to the Bhagavad-Gita, he resides in the atom, in each atom. When you think about an atom, how small it is, it's very difficult to comprehend. Even when you look at 1 millimeter, it's considered that side by side, there's 40,000 atoms within that 1 millimeter distance gap. So you can see how minute the particle of the super soul is. Sharadaksha Vishnu also expands in the planetary expansions of Krishna and his subplanetary expansions of Krishna. Sometimes when he appears in the mature manifestation for participating in the Leelas, he comes in different incarnations. And that is also the Paramatma, the Sharadaksha Vishnu. So as we know from Bhagavad Gita, you've just finished chapter 2. That gives a deep description, deep detail about the spirit soul. You know that the soul, the symptom of the soul is the consciousness, that which pervades the entire body. You should know to be indestructible, Krishna tells Arjuna. So that consciousness that pervades the whole body, the symptom of that consciousness is the symptom of the soul is that consciousness itself. It is part and parcel of Krishna. It is indestructible. No one can kill this the soul. This soul cannot be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor burnt by fire or moistured by water. It is everlasting, ever permeating, and it cannot be destroyed at all. But it's the body, the external part of which is covering the actual the soul itself, which perishes and attains a new body depending on their karmic reaction. And it goes through a cycle of 8,400,000 species of life. So from chapter 2, you understood the differences between the soul, the spirit soul, and of course you have the soul itself, the individual soul. You have the Paramatma, who's the witness within the heart of each living entity. And then of course you have the outer covering, the body itself. So then we go on to the false ego. Where does false ego come from? So I'm just going to share another verse with you. I can find it. Okay, just 1 minute. I'm just going to get used to this technology again. I haven't used it for quite a while. Okay, so this is Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 7, verse 4. Bhumi apo adnalo vayu kamano buddhiya vacha ahankara ityame ahankara iti yame bina prakritya stada earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these eight constitute my separated material energies. So here Krishna is actually telling you this material manifestation consists of the five main elements, which are known as the gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence. Sorry, beg your pardon. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the five gigantic material manifestation. This whole material cosmic manifestation, even the body itself, consists of these five elements itself. From these five elements, we're able to touch, taste, smell, hear, and so forth, the five senses. But on top of that, there is also the mind and the intelligence and the false ego, which pervades this entire universe itself. So the body itself, the subtle part of the body, is the mind, intelligence, and ego. So this the mind and intelligence of false ego, because it's materially subjected, it is not actually, it's still under the conditions of the three modes of material nature, which we'll go to in a little while. So it's important to understand that because we are covered by this material manifestation, we've forgotten our original identity, our original constitutional position, that we are part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, the bhakti or the love that we have for Krishna is covered by layers and layers of karmic reaction. It's covered by the three modes of material nature. It's covered by these earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. But the false ego is what is actually stopping you from becoming Krishna consciousness, because false ego is almost similar to pride. When we're actually thinking that whatever we're doing, whatever we're observing or seeing or doing, we think that we, the body itself, are the person who's doing these activities. But in actuality, it is where the body is only just a machine, but it's the soul that's actually witnessing everything, and it's actually the performer, the main performer itself. So when we look at the false ego is like almost like the juncture between good and bad. It's almost like a juncture understanding when you become selfish and when you become selfless. So when you become selfish, that is when you're actually thinking, I'm doing everything for myself. But when you're doing something selfless, is when you're actually doing it for the benefit of other people. So sometimes there's an analogy when you're feeding a dog. The feeding of the dog analogy is that sometimes you see other people suffering and you feel pleasure in their suffering because there's a feeling of pride. It's just like sometimes when we read the news isn't always exciting, but we feel happy. Oh, somebody's gone through this difficulty. Oh, this, star, this Hollywood star is going through a divorce. Sometimes there's a feeling of joy, although we don't really want to feel like that. We think, why should we suffer when other people are happy? And later on, I'll share a beautiful song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that I'm hoping to sort of make you understand how we sometimes perceive the external world. When we see other people suffering, there's a feeling of joy. But actually, a devotee, he's never seen, he does never like to see anybody suffer at all. He's always like, how would you say it? He's always very compassionate. We always recite the verse, Trinadapi Sanechena, Taropi Sarishtuna, Manina Manadena, Kirtanya Sadari. The devotee always sees, how he can serve the others. He doesn't want any recognition for himself, but he's always ready to serve others, because in that state of frame of mind, he can actually chant the holy name of the Lord purely. So when we're actually having that dog analogy, when I was mentioning earlier on, sometimes we want to feed a dog within ourselves, that selfishness, when we see other people suffering. But at the same time, when you're very, very compassionate, we want to feed or rather not feed the dog, but feed the dog of selflessness, where we're actually seeing compassion for the other person. So we have to understand what is selfishness and what is selflessness. So sometimes, even in Krishna consciousness, you can become very selfish as well. Oh, this is my service. Oh, I did this wonderful book distribution. I should be very happy. I should be proud. I collected so many Lakshmi, collected so many patron members, you know, to assist in the temple. Of course, Prabhupada actually gives a wonderful example that once there was a wealthy person who did not want to donate any money towards the temple. And Prabhupada's disciples told him, look, this particular wealthy person, he did not want to donate towards the temple. And Prabhupada is so amazing in his answers. He says, it is not that he did not want to donate. It is Krishna, he did not want his money because he was very selfish and very proud of himself. So neither does Krishna require anybody's Lakshmi. Bhakti Maharaj mentioned, like when you think of Lakshmi Devi, who's the goddess of fortune, there's millions and millions of goddess of fortunes because there's millions and millions of universes. And each of the universes, we have Garbhodaksha Vishnu residing in all of the universes, and it's attended by Lakshmi Devi. So Lakshmi Devi, she's the goddess of fortune. So when we have Vishnu, and we have the goddess of wealth, there's no need for any wealth at all from anybody. We don't need anything from anyone. And neither does Krishna want of anything at all. Or even though he creates this material universe, it is not that he desires anything at all. But what Krishna is controlled by the love of his devotees. And that's what it is. But the love of his devotees is very pure. It is free from any false ego, free from pride, free from anger, lust, and greed, and illusion. And further on, when I was mentioning about the 3 points of that particular verse, the spirit soul bewildered by the influence of false ego thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the 3 modes of material nature. Now, I do recall that a few months ago, we were reading the Bhagavad-Gita of these particular chapters very precisely, the 3 modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, sattva guna, rajaguna, and tamaguna, and it actually describes the different modes of each person within that different part of the 3 modes of material nature. A devotee with the qualities he has in the mode of goodness, a person with his qualities in the mode of passion is very selfish and self-centered. The person in the mode of ignorance is also selfish and self-centered, and he desires everything for himself. So we want to be beyond this 3 modes of material nature. We want to be free from false ego, free from selfishness, turn our selfishness into selflessness, understanding that, okay, I cooked this wonderful meal, I spent so many hours for Krishna, but it is not me who's done this service. I am doing it on behalf of my spiritual master. Ultimately, it's the spiritual master who gets the credit because it's the spiritual master who allowed you to perform that seva for Krishna in the first place. So whenever you offering prayers, we say in the morning, Guru Vashtakam prayers, Chakshadariven, Samasa Sastri, and then later on, Yasha Prashada, Bhagavad Prashada. These are very important verses, and it's really nice if you learn the translation up by heart because it's actually saying, without the mercy of the spiritual master, you cannot get the benediction of Krishna himself, because the spiritual master is considered to be a confidential servitor of the Lord. So when we get rid of false ego, does anybody want to give an example how we can get rid of false ego in our daily Krishna consciousness activities?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Rupa Mataji, yes.
Like we can think instead of the false ego, we can think I'm a part and parcel of Krishna and I'm an eternal servitor of Krishna and serve Krishna.
That is very good. Yes, I'm part and parcel of Krishna. I'm just an eternal servant of Krishna. So suppose that if you are spending a whole day, Rupa Mataji, cleaning, say the temple floor, and everybody's walking past and you're not just walking everything, you're cleaning, what would you say to them?
I mean, I can think in myself that, I'm doing it for Krishna. That's how I do the things that I don't like to do. Sometimes I think that, okay, I'm doing it for Krishna, so just get it done because I'm doing it for Krishna.
Yeah. So a good example is once there was a devotee cleaning the temple room floor, and he happened to be cleaning during the japa time. And as you know, during japa time, everybody's going round and round in a circle. And I have to admit, I was part of the japa going round and round in a circle, and the devotee got quite annoyed. Prabhuji, can't you just walk somewhere else? Because I'm trying to sweep up the floor. So what it is, we got to think of it two ways. So the devotee, probably the japa time is not the best time to clean up, but at the same time, there may have been some dirt on the floor which may have been missed out previously. So really, in hindsight, the devotee should have stopped walking around and around and let the devotee carry on. So that's actually becoming selfless, because we're actually thinking this devotee is so nice, he's taken up his time from japa to actually clean the floor, and we're just constantly chanting our holy names of the Lord, thinking that we're purifying ourselves, we're getting our japas done quickly. So that's a good example. Thank you very much, Rupa Mataji, thinking that you're actually just a servant of Krishna and doing it for himself. Anybody else want to give an example of how we can get rid of false ego? Supposing if you have a lot of money and you want to donate that money to Krishna, how would you donate that money to Krishna? Would you like to have your name on a big board, or would you like to do it discreetly, or would you like to just say, look, I'm doing it on behalf of my family or my spiritual master? I know it's a sensitive topic when it comes to Lakshmi, because ultimately it's what keeps you alive in the material world. Anybody would like to answer that?
When you're donating something, you want to do it in a low key. You don't want to do it for name and fame. I'll give you an example that I've really gone through, which has really shocked me. Because I lived in the Middle East for 30 years. I was in Doha for 18 years, where I was in touch with devotees, but I would always keep in touch with devotees who were doing, labor work and look after them. Yeah. So one of the devotees there, he was doing the labor work and he used to come to my home, and we were selling a car. We were buying a new car, so we gave him the old car. And, he was very grateful because he could use that car to do taxi work, extra work to make money. Anyway, that's just besides the point. But then just lately, during the COVID situation, I did not hear from him. So I got in touch with him with difficulty and found out that he was back in India, and had lost his job.
All right. Yes.
Through unfortunate circumstances, where his wife's father had died, and she had asked him to come for a few days. And COVID wasn't the time to go when you're working in Middle East, and so he couldn't get back. So I have been to his home because it's near Mayapur. So I know what the situation is like, and how much he's not only responsible for himself, but also his parents and brothers and sisters and all of that. So I thought, we've got to help this devotee somehow to get back on his feet. And we asked him, some friends are trying to get him back to Qatar, but that's not happening. So we said, okay, what can you start here? And it needs money. And I thought, okay, we will put some money in it. And I thought, since it's lived in Qatar and there's so many devotees there, I'll ask them to contribute. Even if each one contributed a little bit, over 1,000 people, it will come to good money. So we would really be able to get that 2 lakhs that he needs.
Yeah, and that's really nice.
No, but you know what response I got?
All right.
Hard luck, Mataji. Hard luck, Mataji. Yeah, because the Bengali devotees, because it's Bengali, the Bengali devotees have recently contributed to a temple, so they haven't got any Lakshmi.
Oh, really?
But these people, and those other devotees are living there for 20, and they are all got money, and they do donate on other things. But you know what? They donate with their name and fame.
Yeah.
This was the I mean, I could not believe this.
Yeah.
If you're reading Gita and you're doing all of this, and you're learning to be compassionate, you know, big book collections and other things, the way I look at it, that people will come together. But it's the other people who really need help. That's real seva.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi Mataji, Meenakshi Madhavi Devi. Thank you. Actually, that's a very good point. I don't know if you know, but I know we're all on different WhatsApp group, and we always get a message, oh, this Prabhuji has had an accident or his health is very poor. Please kindly donate. Sometimes in the back of our mind, we think, well, I don't really know this devotee, and how do I know it's genuine? Because I do know sometimes there could be false advertisement, but certainly if it's a devotee that we know, we should try and do our best to try and serve that devotee. Ultimately, what are we? We want to be Dasan who does. We want to be the servant of the servant. And quite a while back, I don't know if you know Guru Das. Guru Das was the husband of Yamuna Devi. Yamuna Devi sang the beautiful Govinda prayers. She was the author of many, many award-winning vegetarian cookbooks, Hare Krishna cookbooks. She was one of the earlier female disciples of Srila Prabhupada from 1969, with the three couples who came to the UK in 1969. They established Bari Place and helped establish Bhaktivedanta Manor. And just from those 6 devotees and little Saraswati, you know, you can see how Bhaktivedanta Manor and the temple community has blossomed so much in the UK. But about a year ago, there was a situation where Guru Das Prabhu didn't have any money, his health was really poor, and they were doing some fundraising for him. And it is actually quite sad because in one way, there are rich devotees and there are average devotees and devotees who genuinely need some Lakshmi. Of course, I know I'm slightly going off topic here, but the whole point is to get rid of that false ego, get rid of that pride, get rid of that status that you are somebody important, as Meenakshi Mataji mentioned, that sometimes if a devotee is going through a situation, we should try and do our best. I know sometimes in myself, I try and donate to different temples, who may not have so much wealth or contributions within the community because lack of fundings, or perhaps they need a project specifically, foundation of a new project or something. But ultimately, a Vaishnava is somebody who is very compassionate to another devotee, and they try and see the good in everyone itself. We try and do the best in removing all this false ego, this pride, in a way that is actually be able to serve as a community. And it's so important to do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk a little bit more on this particular verse again. The other thing is within false ego, as we see in the material world, especially in the civilization in the last 100 years, we've gone through so much change in the way the world is progressing. It's almost so fast. You know, we've got this computer technology, we've got these cities, huge skyscrapers. You know, whatever we want, you know, just turn on something, you get hot water, cold water, you know, switch on something, you get electric heating and so forth. And human nature is such that we have become sort of occupied with inventing new creations all the time. And sometimes that pride gets the better of us. We actually feel that we are the creators of this whole universe. We've created this city, we've designed this universe. But as you know, nothing can be actually ordained or justified without the sanctioning of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in one of the purport in Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad-Gita, it mentions that not even a blade of grass can move without it being sanctioned by Krishna. So we got to remember that you may live in a beautiful house or a beautiful place, you may have a beautiful car or something. You almost have to remember that whatever we have, Krishna, please, whatever we do, whatever we offer, whatever we give away, we do that as an offering to Krishna, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you know, and that way we actually take away that pride within ourselves. Everything belongs to Krishna. Ultimately, when Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked by several questions by Dharmaraj, in disguise. He said, what was the most important thing that you've seen or learned? And he sees that every day we see people dying, but we always think that it's never going to happen to us. But ultimately, whatever wealth we have, whatever we've accumulated, even our own personality, it is going to come to an end in our life, you know. So it's better that we remove all these 6 enemies within us: anger, lust, greed, pride, illusion, envy. That is all part of the false ego within ourselves. And to free ourselves allows us to become more connected, become more pure, allow us to constantly think of Krishna in a nice, pure way, allow us to serve Krishna in a better way, allow us to not distinguish between whatever service we have, allows us to think whether we have 1 rupee or a million rupees, we will try and give proportionally whatever we can to a needy purpose or a needy cause that will be beneficial in Krishna consciousness. I was going to just mention a beautiful verse earlier on. I did, I've got it down here. This is a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I know the whole verse was about the false ego and freeing up the spiritual thinking himself the doer of activities. Considers himself the doer of activities, but which are actually carried out by the 3 modes of material nature. So in other words, the 3 modes of material nature is actually governing whatever we do: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And although even that is actually being, I suppose, covered by Krishna in the form of that this material world is full of this 3 modes of material nature, and we're conditioned by these 3 modes of material nature. But beyond the 3 modes of material nature, it's a spiritual realm. This song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur sort of slightly explains about the false pride, the ego that we have within our heart. It's part of the songs of the Sharanagati, and it was written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'm not sure. Of course, it would have been about 100 years ago. So basically, the song is taken from the book Sharanagati, Danya Song 4. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that mature people are described as vicious, sinful, greedy, lazy, keep a false pride, lusty. And sinful activities are never ending. We don't realize our sinful and egoistic activities. Having enjoyed all sense gratification activities, we are devoid of spiritual bliss. In old age, when death is near, we have no strength, we have no body strength to remember Sri Krishna. So there's, I believe there's 6 verses. I'm just going to read the first verse, but if there's any volunteers to read the translation, please feel free to do so. Amara jivana sada paperata nahiko punyera lesha parere udvega diyachi chekoto diyachi jivare klesha. This song is, of course, in Bengali, so if anybody knows how to recite it properly, please do so. Does anybody want to read the translations?
Yes, Prabhuji, can I read it?
Yeah, sure, Mataji, go ahead.
I am an impious sinner and have caused others great anxiety and trouble.
Okay,
I have never.
sorry, so if we just stop there, and perhaps we could actually explain who is an impious sinner and have caused others great anxiety and trouble. Basically, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, although he's pure by nature, he is, he's the one who actually started this, the whole Vaishnava Sampradaya, because previously was lost or just hidden away. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was like the propagator of the Krishna consciousness movement. Even though he's a pure person, he's still considering himself an impious person. So that's a form of selflessness as well. Not in a false way, but also actually feeling it that he has become a sinful person and is causing other people anxiety and trouble. Thank you, Mataji. Carry on.
I have never hesitated to perform sinful acts for my own enjoyment, devoid of all compassion, concerned only with my own selfish interest. I am remorseful, seeing others happy. I am a perpetual liar, and the misery of others is a source of great pleasure for me.
Thank you. So once again, I was mentioning earlier on, sometimes when we see other people suffering, it brings a bit of joy because we feel why should I suffer when other people are suffering? But that's actually quite selfish in one way, because we're actually seeing that analogy I was given about feeding the dog. We're actually feeding the dog within us when we see other people suffer so much. But actually, a devotee is always like compassionate, is patita bhavana. He never likes to see other people suffering. Rather, he'd rather suffer himself rather than seeing others suffer. But suffering in the sense that he'd rather free him from that material entanglement by giving them Krishna consciousness, connecting them to Krishna. Okay, thank you. Carry on.
The material desires within the core of my heart are unlimited. I am watchful, devoted to false pride and arrogance, intoxicated by vanity and bewildered by worldly affairs. Envy and egoism are the ornaments I wear.
Yes, thank you. So once again, I know this verse is all about false ego, but false ego comes in many, many forms itself. We become very deceitful, we become very pride, we become very arrogant. Sometimes even in Krishna consciousness, we forget our original Krishna consciousness and we become very angry at the other devotees, causing offenses. And that's one thing which Krishna cannot tolerate. When we create offenses to other devotees, it is also the cause of our downfall in our spiritual life. So we have to be so careful that we become not deceitful towards others. We don't become very proud against others. We don't become arrogant against others. Maybe because we may be initiated and others aren't, we think that we're superior. Actually, no, the superiority actually comes by being completely surrendered in our spiritual lives. Yes, carry on. Number
Ruined
4.
by laziness and sleep, I resist all pious deeds, yet I am very active and enthusiastic to perform wicked acts. For worldly fame and reputation, I engage in the practice of deceitfulness. Thus, I am destroyed by my own greed and am always lustful.
Yeah, thank you. So in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna is asking Krishna, what is it that's causing inevitable to commit sinful activities, even though they may not want to? What is it that's causing them to do bad karmic activities? And Lord Krishna says, Arjuna, it is lust only which is born of the material mode of ignorance and later transformed into wrath, which is, born of passion, which is later transformed later into wrath, which is the devouring sinful enemy of this world. So it's this lust, which is also part of false ego, which is the ahankara, as we know, that's covering this the spiritual body and causing us to work in a different direction away from Krishna consciousness. So we have to remove this lust, which is one of the most degrading part of our spiritual impediments to spiritual life. Yes, number 5.
A vile, wicked man such as this, rejected by godly people, is a constant offender. I am such a person devoid of all good works, forever inclined towards evil, worn out and wasted by various miseries.
Again, you can carry on to number 6 too, Mataji. You could do the last verse too, yeah?
Another one is there, 6.
Yeah, that's it, number 6, the last one, yeah? You could carry on.
Shall I carry on the last one?
Yes, just do the
Now
last one.
in old age, deprived of all means of success, humble and poor, Bhaktivinada submits his tale of grief at the feet of the Supreme Lord.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. So this verse is such a beautiful, the song is so beautiful. I read it very often to remind myself what a selfish person I am and how I should free myself from this entanglement, habitual activities. But it is actually true when we become very old and void of any sort of energy, that we become into that humble realm. Oh my gosh, what have I done for so many years? I've wasted so much time watching TV, being lazy, talking idly, working in doing material activities at work or social activities which are not really producive in our Krishna consciousness. So sometimes you have to really strike a balance in our spiritual life. What is it that we want to do? I know many years ago we had this situation where we had a home program at somebody's house. And then there was a devotee, Prabhu, who was talking about spiritual life, devotee life, Krishna consciousness, material life itself. But one of the ladies in the audience, I mean, she had a very valid point, because if you don't ask a certain question, then you're never going to be sure what the truth lies there. And she said, well, why do I need to believe in all these rules and regulations? I'm just happy doing whatever I want. Why should I follow the rules? Otherwise it's just I suppose, diluted me to a certain theme of attending Krishna. I'm happy just serving Krishna the way I am. So that is very nice in one way, but actually the rules and regulations help you become or restrict you from doing certain activities which are not favorable to Krishna consciousness, then at the same time allow you to do things which are favorable to Krishna consciousness. For instance, in the morning when we before we recite or chant japa, we recite the 10 offenses. 10 offenses are a constant reminder of the things that we should not do in order to ensure that we chant purely, chant clearly, thinking of Krishna, not being inattentive in our chanting, not creating any offenses. When we're doing puja, we have to be clean. We have to follow certain rules and standards. If we do not follow the rules and standards, then people would just do anything they want to. They may think, oh, let me taste the offering first before we offer to Krishna. No, the reason being, the whole Bhagavad-Gita is a book of instructions. I recall another time a person told me that I've read the Bhagavad-Gita, but I don't find any instructions in the Bhagavad-Gita at all. And I was thinking, what? Oh my gosh, the whole Bhagavad-Gita is full of instructions telling Arjuna what to do and what not to do. So sometimes you need to have an authority to help you and assist you to become or be connected to Krishna consciousness. Having a spiritual master, having a mentor, having a very good associate so you can exchange thoughts, privately or, in a way that is not revealing to anybody else what you may want to speak in confidentiality. So it's so important that whenever you speak in Krishna consciousness, that you take the instructions of an authority, because otherwise, if you just do whatever you want to in your spiritual life, then you could make offenses, you could make aparadhs, you may not progress in your spiritual life. And what happens? You get burnt out and you feel, well, I've been chanting and chanting and chanting, I'm not still getting a taste. Why is that? Because if we don't follow the rules and regulations, following the rules and regulations also allows us to free ourselves from this false ego. So once again, this false ego is also preventing us to become, or it's because it's covered by this mature nature, the three modes of mature nature, we have to free ourselves from the false ego so we have pure ego. So sometimes there is a good reason why we should have ego, good ego. Could anybody sort of give an answer where good ego is recommended?
I suppose if we take the example of devotees and, devotees say to others, asking them to come into Krishna consciousness and telling them the benefits, how it would change their life.
Yeah, that's very good.
So
yeah,
that's what I can think of. That's we're not being trying to be. It's not pride. It's because we feel that we have benefited so much.
yeah.
We want others. We want to save others from the clutches of Maya, misery. Prabhupada saved us, and we want to save others, and that's why we try to tell them, come.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Anybody else would like to give another example where ego is very good?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hi, boss, Sandeep. How are you?
Prabhuji, just came back from India and I've got an example from there.
Yeah, that's nice. You used to come on the chat groups so many times before.
Prabhuji, and I was in India and we come from a family of Brahmins. So one of my uncles was praying with me,
Yeah.
and we were doing puja, and I quoted the verse, Sarvdharam Paritajyam,
Yeah.
like, and Devi Devtas are there, we respect them.
Yeah.
But Krishna said, and further on we were praying, and some of the cousins were sitting there, they were making fun of me because I was dressed in a dhoti and kurta, and they were saying, I'm giving an example of where pride is good, where ego is good. And they were saying, oh, look, we have got imported Brahmins, we have got imported pujaris from
Oh,
England.
yeah.
They were making fun of me. So I said, look, you all have turned into Shudras, and that's why Brahmins have to come from England now.
Yeah.
So this is an example where you have to set people in their place so that they start listening to the correct things. And they got the point. So I think that was not out of my pride or ego, but I think it was important for me to tell them where they have fallen to.
That's very good, Sandy Prabhu. Yeah, that is very good, because unfortunately there is this distinguish in feeling, especially they call them the smarter Brahmins, who are Brahmins born by birth, and there's the Brahmins who have been actually educated or actually gone through the sampradaya, got initiation from spiritual masters, bona fide spiritual masters. So yes, there is that differentiation, almost like discrimination as well. But at the same time, it's specifically, as Krishna says to Arjuna about the four ashrams, the four varnas, you have the, beg your pardon, you have the Kshatriya warriors, you have the Shudras, you have the Kshatriya, you have the Brahmins, and then you have, the Kshatriyas as well, the four varnas. So it's important to understand that each person, based on their personality, falls into one of these categories, as a Brahmin, as a Shudra, as a Vaishya, as a Kshatriya. But importantly, what's important to remember is actually having the principles of a Brahmin, so you could actually act like a Brahmin as well. If they were actually Brahmins by nature are humble, very truthful, very peaceful. They would not sort of discriminate at all, but actually they would actually be praising somebody. Oh, look, you've come from the West and you've taken this very big responsibility of becoming like a Vaishnava, which is obviously higher than a Brahmin, becoming a Brahmin. And so that's why it's so important that sometimes we got to project ourselves and say that, look, although I'm not pure by nature, I'm not even a devotee, but I'm trying to become a better devotee. And this is based on this Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Thank you, Sandeep. Anybody else got a good example where ego is very good? I'll just come to an end soon.
Can I just say that, Prabhu?
Yeah, sure, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Well, I just think that, there are two sort of dogs. One is good dog and one is bad dog. Every time I heard that example of ego.
Yeah.
And the one is evil with anger, jealousy, greed, and all that sort of thing. And the other one is good, where he brings joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, you just name it. So the dog who wins is the one you feed.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
right.
it means.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful that we have to be happy, humility, all that, humbleness, compassionate. That's a good ego.
Yeah, that is good. So that was actually some of the points that I wanted to raise. When you have a good ego, it's not because you want to be proud of yourself, but actually you want to actually motivate yourself, you want to inspire yourself, you want to have that personality where you're feeling very inspired in Krishna consciousness. Ultimately, all of you won't be wasting your time coming on to this Bhagavad-Gita verse every day or every evening. I know many of you are very regulars. But it's important to understand you're doing it out of good ego. I could be watching TV, I could be with my friends, I could be doing something else, but you've actually committed yourself using your good intelligence to actually participate in this service. So Mataji was earlier saying that it's also the personality within you to have a good sort of personality, have good relationship with one another, having been peaceful, truthful, it brings about joy and happiness in you. And that's what good ego is about. It's allowing you to motivate, move one step further to Krishna. And every step that you take towards Krishna, you'll be surprised. Krishna takes 100 steps towards you. You may not notice it at the beginning, but later on you do notice it. I just see if there's any questions on the chat group. Okay. So Sarabhi Mataji said, so putting people in their place in the right way, when they mock or insult you, it's good or not, feeling false ego, hopefully. So basically, it's not necessarily putting people in the right place, but what you're trying to do is explain to them that this is what the Shastras are saying, and I'm just basically following them. If you belittle them, it's also a feeling of pride within yourself as well. Sometimes when you do preaching, I was just happy to go through some reviews of Bhaktivedanta Man and ISKCON London on Google. And on one of the review, it's at 1 star. And it actually was quite disturbing because it actually mentioned that, you know, this person came up to me and said, oh, would you like a book? And there's no cost to it. And she said yes. But then she explained in the review that later on he harassed her for £10. And then furthermore, £10 was enough. He harassed the lady for £15. Now, that is not a very good reputation in terms of like book preaching at all. It's actually showing that we're actually just after the money rather than allowing this person to become connected to Krishna consciousness. So there's a false ego. We want some money, but at the same time, the ego is actually allowing that person to become connected to Krishna consciousness. So that review is actually showing a bad example of an individual. Of course, not everybody is not the same. So that was a one-off incident. And sometimes it could have been a person who was having a grumpy day anyway. So maybe they put a bad review. But it's so important that when we become very Krishna conscious in our spiritual life, that we treat each person like if they're part and parcel of God. When we say the word namaste, it's actually saying namaste to the spirit soul within the heart. One other question here. If the modes of nature govern our actions, does the living entity have any free will? If a living entity acts due to the influence of modes of nature rather than free will, thereby does he suffer karmic reaction? So once again, the living entity does have a free will because ultimately we're living in this material world and we're designing what we want to do. I could just be very rude and say something rude to all of you, but because I've been fortunate to be in Krishna consciousness, I have a little intelligence, little tiny 1.11% to know what's right and wrong. But somebody else could take this class and just take it completely opposite and say, I don't believe in God at all. I'm an atheist. So the three modes of mature nature, although that governs the conditioned soul, but the living entity has a free will. We have a desire to do whatever we want in our life. It's not always, although it's governed by the three modes, and we get that karmic reaction depending on what we do in our life. Whether we do something good, then something good happens in our next life. If we do something bad, then something bad will happen in our next life. It may not be like for like, but for a devotee, it's slightly different because a devotee, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, by purifying himself, he takes away all his karmic reaction. For instance, it's in one of the purposes in the Bhagavad-Gita, Prabhupada explains that sometimes a devotee may cut his finger accidentally, but he may think, oh, Krishna, I've cut myself. But in hindsight, in his previous life, he could have murdered somebody, but Krishna is actually mitigating that sinful reactions. Why is that? Because Krishna is taking on that karmic reaction. By seeing this devotee being very sincere in his spiritual life, progressing in a sincere life, Krishna is mitigating that offenses. So instead of getting a life karmic reactions, Krishna intervenes and takes on that several reactions. As Sandy Prabhu earlier mentioned on, you mentioned Sarvadharma Parityajya Mamikam Saranam Vraja Ham Papebhyo Moksha Sujaha. Abandon all varieties of religion. I free you from all sinful reactions because you are my dear devotee. So that's what Krishna wants you to do. He wants you to abandon all varieties of religion. Religion not necessarily means our own religion, our own Christian consciousness, means that we have to stop activities which are not favorable in Christian consciousness. The reason Sarabi Mataji asked, the reason I asked is I was also at the receiving end of a mock and insult. I'm sorry. The reason why I asked, I was also at the receiving end of a mock and insult by a few in the spiritual group. So I was just asking, thanks, I got the answers. Thank you, Sarabi Mataji. Thanks for the informative session. In the real world, people who don't know much about religion but are compassionate, don't insult and donate a lot. Are such people more advanced in giving up false ego or do not come in this league at all? So just read that question again. In the real world, people who do not know much about religion but are compassionate, don't insult and donate a lot. So what it is, there are different kinds of pious men. Some people may actually just want to become Krishna consciousness because they've suffered a lot. In the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna mentions about the 4 types of people who pray to God. Those who are in distress because they feel that there's no other answers and they come to Krishna praying for, please get rid of me of my distressful situation. I'm going through these difficulties. There's people who desire wealth and money. People want money and wealth as well. It's quite natural that we pray to God for material objectives in our life. There are a third person category. It's those people are just generally inquisitive about God. Who is God? Why is he here? What does he do? And there's the fourth category, are those who are searching for the absolute truth. They are very inquisitive already by previous birth. They become very sattvic in their nature and they want to learn more about Krishna. But the final person is the person who is completely Krishna consciousness, who is devoid of all sort of material attachments, devoid of all false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others. That person is actually not praying to Krishna for material distress or material opulence or any sort of perhaps mundane sort of inquiry. Does God exist? Is he approved? How do I know? Could I get an example? Could I get some feeling of devotion service? So going back to Sarabi Mataji's questions, when a person may not be completely Krishna consciousness, but he may want to give donation to Krishna, but Krishna actually sees that person because he's actually seen that person. It's not given out of pride. It's given because he feels there is an opportunity for me to serve Krishna, but I don't have that opportunity. But of course, Krishna will intervene with that person by giving him that opportunity to allow him to serve later on. Because ultimately, as I mentioned earlier on, Krishna doesn't want anything from you. He doesn't want any money at all because he is the cause of everything in this material world. But what he does, what he is controlled by, is like the gopis' pure love. When the gopis have so much love for Krishna, he is controlled by the devotees' love for him. Because in his heart, Krishna has nobody else apart from the devotees, and the devotees' heart, they have nobody else except for Krishna in their heart. So I hope that answers your questions. I know we got slightly over time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So once again, when we see somebody on the devotee, whether it's a neophyte devotee or a devotee on the same level as us, or a devotee who is advanced, as Narada Muni explained to Dhruva Maharaj, when you see somebody who's junior to you, treat them with kindness, treat them with love. Teach them about Krishna consciousness and respect them. When you see somebody equal to you, become good friends with them rather than enemies with them. And if you see somebody senior to them, you don't see the pride within yourself, but we actually see somebody senior. Let me offer my obeisances to that senior devotee. Let me become acquainted to that senior devotee, take shelter of him. By taking shelter of that senior devotee, you can also become spiritualized in your progression in activities and spiritual connections to Krishna. I hope that answers everything. I know there's some more questions coming in. I'm happy to answer them, but I obviously don't want to keep you all waiting as well. So I'll end it at that time. Thank you so much from everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances and forgive me if I've made any offenses or any errors. I'm obviously, just surrendered unto my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Swami, to allow me to carry on with my spiritual life. Vanchika patarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitana bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai. Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful session. Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.